My husband doesn't care about our dog, so I threw away his Xbox. Story. This is going to be a little long. Please try to bear with me and understand my situation. Thank you. For starters, I am a nurse, 35F. I have been extremely busy these past 3 months. Even writing this post is a privilege, and I'm having to do this in bits and pieces. I also gave birth to my daughter 6 months ago. I have an 8-year-old son as well. When I am not working, I take care of my children. In January 2019, my son suddenly developed this strong desire to have a dog. He begged and begged for a puppy from my husband, 35M. I protested against that because I had just found out that I was pregnant. Jesus. My husband said that we should let our son have a puppy to teach him some responsibility and that he would have some practice to take care of his baby sibling. He had also promised that he would help our son take care of the dog. I was absolutely unconvinced, but I had to give in eventually because my husband had already agreed and I didn't want to cause further fights. 5 days ago, my son had accidentally left the back door of our house open and the dog ran away. These 5 days were also some of the busiest, most grueling days of my work, and I had to take up night shifts because a colleague had fallen sick. Our son first went to my husband for help. He refused to help him and said that it was my son's responsibility to care for the Yet, and he has to do something about it himself. My husband has the privilege of working from home. He works at a law firm. He works for maybe 3 to 4 hours a day and plays Xbox the entire time and sometimes gets up to check up on our daughter. He literally has no added pressures. 5 days ago, when our son told me in tears that Dad won't look for Tippy, I talked to my husband, who said that it would teach our son some responsibility to take care of things in the future, which I found very callous since a dog is a living, sentient being and not a thing. He was playing Xbox when I was talking to him as well. He also said he won't look for the dog or anything. Yesterday, after coming home at night, the first thing I did was unplug the Xbox console and controller and throw it in the trash can. This morning, before going to work, my husband threw a fit when he didn't find his Xbox in the living room. I told him that I'd thrown it away because he was so addicted to it that he couldn't even get up and help our distressed son. When I came back from work, he told me he had found his Xbox in the trash since the garbage truck hadn't arrived then. Now, he's being incredibly snarky, giving me the cold shoulder, and he's angry because his controller isn't working. He also hasn't taken any measures to look for our dog, and our mutual best friend called and said my reaction was incredibly childish. Now I am spending my free day calling every neighbor of ours, making internet posters and contacting animal shelters and animal control to see if Tippy had turned up anywhere, and consoling my heartbroken son. Am I the a-hole? Edit. My husband is a lawyer. A lawyer's job depends on how many clients he has. My husband currently has almost no clients due to obvious reasons. He told me this himself. So his workload is significantly less. This is for all those people who are saying that I am downplaying his work. Update. Tippy still hasn't been found yet. My shift has ended about 30 minutes ago, and I'll go home and drive around in my neighborhood and surrounding areas to look for him. I have posted some pictures of Tippy on my profile for those who requested. Husband is still sulking about his controller. I am at my wit's end. Update. Tippy has been found. Response 1. Wow, your husband expected an 8-year-old to go look through town for the lost dog by himself because he wanted to play games instead? Well, what a carpty husband and father he is. Your kid won't forget it, that's for sure. Not the a-hole. I would have saved the Xbox, thrown out the husband. Reply 1. Oh dear, that made me laugh. I am just so exhausted both mentally and physically that my husband's lack of response was just the last straw. Reply 2. Girl, it's not a last straw, it's a giant red flag. These are not the actions of a man who loves or respects his family. Reply 3. Or his neighbors. Let's have the one person who's surrounded by sick people all day, potentially deadly ones too, and have her troll the neighborhood putting up signs and spreading her potential germs everywhere? Edited. My first silver. Thanks. Reply 4. Also, let's not forget they cheering. Husband agreed to the dog against OP's wishes in the first place, and the only reason OP agreed to the dog is so no fights were had or anything. Reply 5. Going to be honest here, your husband is such a bad father that he caused a lasting bad memory, maybe even trauma, for your son. He won't forget that and will remember it forever. When I was his age, something similarly bad happened with my father, and I never got over it. This is not teaching a lesson. This is planting trust issues, abandonment feelings, and a lot of pain and resentment. Since your husband altogether sounds like a piece of work, you should consider throwing him in the trash, not the console. Give that to your son. Might be the only good thing he gets from his father. Response 2. I was going to go with ESH because throwing something in the trash is not the right response, but your husband sucks so much that I'm sticking with, not the a-hole. I so feel for you. Your husband's response is truly callous and shows him as uncaring and irresponsible parent and spouse. And it goes beyond not helping to search for the dog. Is also him not picking up the slack when you are so stressed at work and are dealing with your kids. Sadly, the current situation has exposed a-holes in many people. Reply 1. Yeah, 99 times out of 100, I fall in the eye for an eye leaves the world blind camp. But I can't get over not going to look for a dog and basically letting your kids suffer like that. Reply 2. Hey, at least she didn't smash the console in front of his face. Also worries me how little he cares about his whole family, Tippy included. Tippy is a life, not just the son's learning experience. Reply 3. A life that he, the husband, insisted they get, no less. I assumed at first he was pushing so hard because he himself wanted a dog, but that is clearly not the case, since he doesn't seem to care at all that the dog got out. What an ass. At this point, I'm close to saying he only wanted the dog to make his wife's life harder. Reply 4. He may have also thought having a new dog would distract the kiddos so he didn't have to watch them as much during the day, which makes me just the slightest bit pissier about the whole situation. I know guys like these. I've lived with them. I can't stand them. Reply 5. Well, it's become a learning experience, but definitely not the one the dad thinks. That poor boy's learned the hard way that when he really, really needed help, daddy didn't help at all. Response 3. Your son will be scarred by this for a long time. When he emotionally needed his father, he did not act like a parent. Sounds like your husband is a bit of a selfish jerk. Although 2 wrongs don't make a right, your son is also watching you on how to handle it. Teach him well. Reply 1. Piggybacking this as a person who had a parent use endangering a pet as a teaching moment at the same age, your son will literally never forget this. It will inevitably come up if he ever has to seek therapy as an adult. He will use it for the rest of his life as one of his markers for the kind of person his dad is. Reply 2. Holy carp, you're right. I used to cut myself for attention, pain, whatever, and my parents would find out about it. Instead of offering counseling or support, my dad was so pissed that I was mutilating myself that he grabbed my dog, grabbed a knife, and then threatened with hurting the dog, saying, "Do you like that? Do you like somebody cutting up your child?" And I mean, I kind of get the point he was trying to make, but holy carp, was that the worst way to go about it. Scarred for life. Reply 3. I am weeping. Holy carp, that's so horrible. My dad discovered my cuts and my parents took away any privacy I had, and I thought that was bad. By taking away my privacy, I mean that after that I wasn't allowed to have my own room. Me and my sister shared a bed. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere by myself, and anything over 20 minutes in the shower meant incessant knocking until I came out. I've always been a long shower taker, and it was hard going from 40-minute showers to 20 minutes. Now, I'm just super glad that my mom has asthma and we never had pets. Reply 4. In 10 years, the son will be telling this story on Reddit, and someone will dig around and find this exact post, and hopefully by then, Tippy is nice and old and laying at the son's feet, and the dad is out of the picture. Reply 5. My mom does it, and I'm 22. She's threatened to let the dogs and cat loose and even put our older dog down because of behavior issues. I don't think she'd actually do it because she cares about them too, but I think she also knows that I'd call animal control or the cops on her if she did either of those things. Edit. I'm so happy your dog was found. Response 4. NTA. Strongly considered. Everyone sucks here because your reaction was super immature, but I'm sticking with not the a-hole because your husband is seriously wrong. And considering the fact that you're a nurse during this pandemic, and you just gave birth recently, and you have an 8-year-old, and a husband who sounds like zero help, I can't really blame you for reacting the way you did. Tippy is not a lesson to teach. Like you said, the dog is a sentient being, and forcing an 8-year-old to try to find him is unreasonable. This sounds more like laziness than a proper lesson. What does your husband expect your son to do? Go out on his own searching around the neighborhood? Visit animal shelters by himself to see if anyone has brought Tippy in? Your husband needs to seriously step up. You can't do everything. Anyway, hope you find Tippy and that you stay safe at work. Reply 1. 100% agree with your opinion, but you might want to edit the part where you typed ESH and space the letters out if you want your vote to count. Reply 2. NTA because this. Yes, the pet was gotten for your son on the condition he care for it, but he is a child. Does your son also pay for all the dog's food? What about his vet bills? No, because it doesn't work that way. He is 8. Teaching a child responsibility with a pet comes with feeding the pet, cleaning up messes, potty training it, playing with / walking it, etc. Shrugging your shoulders and going teaching moment when the child made a mistake and let the dog out because you're so invested in your Xbox that you don't have enough of a soul to go try to rescue it is heartless. It's also going to traumatize your son. And then imagine how much worse the damage to your son's mental health will be if the dog turns up dead. Your son will never forgive himself or your husband. It'll do lasting damage and possibly cause him to develop anxiety. Reply 3. Kids don't adopt pets. Every responsible shelter will explain this and make sure adults are fully involved in adoption. Husband was the one wanting the dog. Reply 4. The father hasn't taught the child any lesson about responsibility. He simply taught him that pets are disposable. He sounds like a carp father, especially considering he sometimes checks on the 6-month-old when OP is at work. Response 5. OP, what a dick of a dad and husband. I have a 7-year-old son. He was sitting reading a book the other day. I walked near him to say hi. He looked up and said, "Hi, Daddy. I love you. I mean, how can I act like your husband to my son? I would do anything for him." Reply 1. Haha, it's so weird being a dad to kids who always say, "I love you" when growing up. That was a scarce thing said in my family. I'm sure you've made it a point to always tell your kids you love them. My wife and I have always followed up both good and bad criticism with, "I love you." And I am still caught off guard when my kids will just randomly run by while playing and say, "Hey, Dad, love you," and just run off playing again, not really waiting for an answer. Laugh out loud. When you look back and think about those moments, it really dawns on you that your kids are so loved that they feel like they have to remind you that, not the other way around. As OP said, you're a great father. You truly are. Keep up the good and hard work of being a great dad. Reply 2. My dad never told me he loved me growing up. I knew he did, but just never heard him say it. When I got to college, I noticed that other people's dads would tell them they loved them whenever they were getting off the phone. One day, my sophomore year, I called him and asked him why he never told me he loved me. He told me that his dad had never told him and it just wasn't something they did. I ended the call and told him I loved him. And I did that every time we talked, which was a lot. I was a quintessential daddy's girl. Until one day he started saying it back. Not every time, but sometimes. But no matter what, I signed off our call with a "love you." 10 years later, he'll now tell me without any prompting. I never doubted it, but it sure is nice to hear. Reply 3. My husband and I had a whole conversation about how our son 3 will randomly tell us he loves us or will walk into our room just to check on you and leave. Kids are usually motivated by wants. They ask for a drink and won't stop asking until they get it. They don't really get anything by just randomly screaming, "I love you" from across the room. But we do it to him so much that it's just the norm. He has a camera in his playroom and I'll randomly check on him, then use the mic to ask if he's okay and tell him I love him. Kids absorb the love you give them. Response 6. NTA. Honestly, what I can't get over in this story is the fact that, look, it'd be bad enough if the husband expected your young son to look for the dog all by himself. That alone is enough to make him the a-hole. But he wants your son to wander the neighborhood alone looking for the dog during a pandemic. The trauma your son may face over the loss of the dog is one thing, but your husband sounds like he's okay willfully endangering the kid so he can play COD. Reply 1. This is one of the major factors why I broke down in the first place. He was trying to endanger my son. Reply 2. When this is said and done, get marital counseling. I want to say leave him because he's such a giant asshat, but I suppose it may be worth trying to save before you leave his ass. Reply 3. Also, what is your 6-month-old doing while he plays Xbox? Is he just leaving her in a crib or playpen? That was done to me as a small child by a daycare worker, and I still have some mental issues related to it. I so vividly remember being small and being left alone to cry for hours and sit in a dirty diaper. Reply 4. This is an excellent question. At 6 months, she's old enough to spend more time out of her crib than in it, and he should be interacting with her. Reply 5. Question. You keep saying my son. Is this older child from a previous relationship, or is it your son with him? Him acting this way to any child is BS, but if the kid isn't biologically his, I feel this adds several extra layers of how he's a massive AH. Response 7. You threw out the wrong thing. You should have thrown out your husband and given his Xbox to your son to cheer him up. Absolutely not the a-hole. Reply 1. How can she ever look at him the same? I mean, you could still love him, but he showed you his true character. Sucks. The Xbox should still go. And I'm sorry, but I don't get the interference from friends in adult relationships. I mean, my husband and I share the same group of friends. We obviously bitch about our spouses to each other, but no one would ever, never call up a friend and tell someone that they're wrong in a personal couples fight. No way. Not your business at all. Crazy sauce has been poured all over the adult population. Edit, fixed a misspelling. Response 8. You're not the a-hole. What does your husband expect an 8-year-old to do to find a lost dog? He's a child. He needs an adult to help call local rescue centers, local vets, make posters, etc. And your husband is being very uncaring. He should be acting like a dad, not a third child too engrossed in his video games to look after his children. I understand getting a pet for children to teach them to responsible, but as an adult, he should understand there are some things that will fall to you and your husband, such as paying for vet bills and looking for them when they're lost. Reply 1. Yeah, and getting a pet to teach responsibility should not be sink or swim. The adults should model responsible pet ownership to the child, and then let the child take over once they've learned. It shouldn't be like, here's a dog, it's your responsibility, so have at it. Try to train it and keep it alive. That's your trial run for taking care of your infant sibling. Reply 2. Exactly. 8 years old is too young to look after a dog completely on their own. Surely the parents have some responsibility, and the 8-year-old helps with walks and playing with them. It's cruel on the dad's part to know their dog has run away and do nothing about it. Reply 3. That's what's so incredibly effed up about the husband's response. He knew, or should have known, that a child that young needs some guidance with a pet. I too understand teaching responsibility, but to this extent, it's absolutely absurd to expect an 8-year-old to find this dog by himself. Response 9. NTA, and for anyone saying your reaction was childish, they're not taking everything into consideration. All right, maybe it was rash in some alternate universe where everyone is supposed to have a perfect reaction, no matter their emotional and physical exhaustion, nor the behavior of the other party. But whatever. Also, I'm a gamer. But every time my partner says, honey, can I talk to you when you're done with that, or can pause? I can wait. I always tell her, a game is never more important than you or this house. This will always wait. And I put down the damn controller. Your husband is an idiot, and you, my brave healthcare worker fighting for people's lives, deserve better. Reply 1. I think it's awesome that your spouse gives you the option to get to a save point or with. I always tried to do that since I know not all games have a save system. I play a roguelike game myself, and if you don't get to a save spot, to damn bad. But I wouldn't care if my partner needed me right now. It's just a game. Response 10. I'm worried about your 6-month-old daughter. He just gets up to check on her sometimes? That's some serious neglect. There's so much development happening to her right now, and he should be reading to her, spending tummy time with her, etc. You need to intervene right now. Reply 1. Honestly, genuinely speaking, I wasn't aware that he was this neglectful. I have been incredibly busy for these 3 months, and I didn't have the time to check up on my baby girl. I used to be home for the first 3 months of her life, and then I had to suddenly get back to work. Not just my husband, it seems I am a carpty mom too. Reply 2. I don't blame you at all. How could you have known? But now that you do, I'm sure you'll step in right away. We expect our partners to be our teammate and to care for our children the same way we would. It can be shocking when we find out that's not the case. But his Xbox is like an alcoholic with wine. Absolutely yes. Get it out of the house right away. And he absolutely needs to start counseling like yesterday. Reply 3. I agree with this mostly. Husband needs to lose access to the Xbox. But also don't just throw out the expensive $300 piece of technology. Lock it up and take the key to work with you, or sell it or something. Reply 4. Not sure if that was sarcasm or if you genuinely think you're a bad mom, but I hope that is not the case. You trusted your partner and the father of your child to be a responsible, caring parent and an equal partner, and they failed you. You are seeing this now and are doing everything you can to support your son, find Tippy, and you are aware now of your husband's neglect. You are not a bad mom. You are a mom in a bad situation with a lazy, at best, partner. I hope you have support for your mental and emotional well-being outside of your marriage, because you need some chill time stat and someone to hear you out and care about your needs. Reply 5. It's not your fault. You expected, quite reasonably, for your husband to be a father and not a massive a-hole. Response 11. My first inclination was to say ESH, but after a bit of consideration, I'm going to say not the a-hole. Your husband sucks that much. How is a child supposed to find a dog by themselves? That's ridiculous. Also, thank you for all the hard working you're doing. Edited for punctuation. Reply 1. Haha, thank you. I genuinely can't believe people out there in Florida and other states are protesting this quarantine. This situation will probably get worse. Stay safe. Response 12. NTA, I love all y'all defending the Xbox. As a parent, your most valued relationship should be double your spouse and kids. Mom answered very truthfully, my kids are my number one. Boom, you have 3 kids. I suggest when the quarantine is over that you reduce to 2 kids. Your son is 8. He is at an age where he should be able to depend on his parents, and dad just proved he cannot. Not only that, but I don't trust him to put the baby's needs ahead of his own either. He has really poor judgment. Also, I hope Tippy comes home soon. Reply 1. Thank you. People act like throwing out a console is a high crime after neglecting and traumatizing their child and abandoning the family pet. Xbox can be replaced. Lives and relationships matter more. Reply 2. I was wondering when someone was going to bring up the baby too. If he can't be bothered to part with his Xbox to look for a lost dog or console, his crying 8-year-old, how much of the 6-month-old's needs are being met? How much fussiness is he ignoring? Her baby, her kid, and the dog all require attention and have needs. I'm not sure in this situation that I wouldn't react by throwing the Xbox away too. Response 13. NTA, your son is 8 years old. He can't expect his son to do just about everything. His brain isn't fully developed and mistakes happen. And your husband just sitting all day playing Xbox does not help the situation at all. He should help his son and be a parent. Response 14. I came here 100% expecting to be mad, and I am mad. At your husband. Your son is 8. Him losing his dog possibly forever because your husband won't get off of a game to help him is beyond ridiculous. I hope your husband realizes that 8 is old enough to remember when someone let you down. Obviously not the a-hole. Response 50-ish. By the letter of the law only. Throwing the Xbox in the trash, and to the point where it would have gone in the truck if he hadn't retrieved it, is for sure only going to cause additional issues. I don't fault your frustration or taking it to that extreme, but again, By the letter of the subreddit law only, it puts you in the a-hole category. But what in the actual F? The entire reason most parents don't want a pet for their kids is because they know they'll be taking care of it most of the time. If the dog hadn't been fed or watered or went in the house, then yes, that's a perfect teaching lesson in being a responsible pet owner for your son. But expecting an 8-year-old to find a lost dog by himself during a quarantine, that alone might have made husband a-hole of the year. But being a husband to a nurse with the world as it is right now and still not being willing to lift a finger to help. Jesus Christ. Reply 1. Normally, if the dog had ran away 2 weeks or so ago, then I would have been able to help my son. It's just so distressing to me that my husband wouldn't help his own son. Reply 2. I just can't fathom any father who could see their child in distress like that and think, sorry, bud, gotta fire up Call of Duty, you're on your own. Your husband seems to take his parenting responsibilities as seriously as his dog owner responsibilities. Reply 3. Even 2 weeks ago, your husband should have been out helping to find that dog. Acting like a father. In my opinion, not the a-hole. Yes, when you got the dog, it was said that the dog was your son's responsibility. But the thing is the kid is 8. The husband could have at least driven your son around so he could look for the dog and call the dog, because at 8, he doesn't really have any means of transportation except you and your husband. I think you were justified in throwing it out because yes, the dog is your son's responsibility. It's still a family pet. But your husband needs to have time away from the Xbox. Reply 1. Even a really responsible 8-year-old is going to have challenges meeting every doggy need. I took good care of my dog at 10, baths, breakfast and dinner, walks, playtime. I wasn't perfect, but I did a lot of lifting for someone so young. I couldn't drive him to the vet or pay for his food. I needed parents for that. I think it makes perfect sense for the daily ordinary stuff to be on the kids in most cases. But extraordinary stuff like a dog getting loose needs parental help. Response 17. Wait, is your husband also looking after your youngest at this time? A child under 3 needs constant supervision. How the hell is he able to play video games all day without seriously endangering your youngest? Reply 1. He keeps her crib near him when he plays. To be honest, these 3 months have been one of the worst of my life with a sudden pandemic. I do not know how he was treated my daughter these 5 days when I had 12-hour shifts. Reply 2. I am so sorry you're having to go through this. I'm no addiction specialist, but your story has some telltale signs that are concerning. The health and safety of your children is paramount here. Maybe he can tear himself away, but maybe not. Maybe your son is having to pick up the slack because dad is addicted to living in fantasy rather than reality. Ultimately, you are 100% not the a-hole, and this goes deeper than him not looking for the dog with his son. This comes down to the real possibility of neglect of his children. You cannot be everywhere, and it sounds like you're doing everything you can, but he needs to seek help and step up. You may also want to think about your social safety net for child minding, if he can't see reason. Also, thank you so much for your work during this crisis. Reply 3. OP, reach out to your neighbors and any family in the area. Get your kids out of that house. Do not be obvious about it. Be very, very subtle. Ship your kids off to grandma and grandpa's house because you are worried about bringing home germs or something. Chances are your husband won't notice and will be foolishly glad of the uninterrupted game time. Do not send any of your stuff with your kids. If you decide to leave him after all of this, sending only your kids to protect them from his neglect won't get you in trouble. But if you abandon your home, he will be able to use it against you in a legal battle. Response 18. NTA only because you're a health worker back from maternity leave during a pandemic, and apparently also the single mother of 3 children. Your reaction was way too much, but you're dealing with a global emergency at work and a bad situation at home. At least the Xbox survived your wrath. Laugh out loud. Your husband should not have gotten the dog if he wasn't going to look after it. An 8-year-old child can help out, but an 8-year-old can't even care for himself all the time, much less be a dog's primary caretaker. Mistakes on the kid's part is expected. The adult husband should have had more realistic expectations about this. You guys need to clear things up, because judging from your comments, he might be developing an addiction to gaming. Reply 1. Yes, I think this is exactly right. Throwing away someone's things is typically a pretty move, but the husband is so far over the line here, and the circumstances are so extreme that I think OP deserves a full pass. Response 19 NTA. What goes around comes around. Will sis learn this? Unlikely, but you should offer the lesson just the same. Response 20. None of the people here commenting that throwing away someone's Xbox is unacceptable has ever had to co-parent with a video game addict. I guarantee it. On his days off, my ex would only spend 15 minutes with his kid, not looking at the TV. On days that he worked, he literally did not see him because he chose to arrange his schedule around playing video games, sleeping, and working. Video games are not more important than parenting. They literally do not matter compared to being a parent, and they are absolutely connected. He's sacrificing one for the other. I really suspect there's a whole generation of dudes out there telling themselves parenting is something they can do without being actively engaged, and that they can have the same lifestyle they had in high school without growing up at all or taking any responsibility in their personal lives. I wish people took it more seriously as an addiction, because it can and does ruin lives.